The alarm didn't even need to go off. I was already awake, lying there, in the quiet, watching the first gray light of morning creep around the edges of the blinds. There was a feeling in my chest, a little flutter of anticipation. It was silly, really a childish hope. But it was there. I let myself feel it for a moment. This quiet excitement. Today was my birthday. I listened to the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint sound of a car passing on the wet street outside. But no footsteps, no hushed voices planning a surprise. Just silence. I got up, pulled on my robe, and went downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The coffee maker was cold. I started the coffee myself, the routine of it. Already feeling heavier than usual, I kept listening, waiting for a door to open, for someone to come in, singing. "Bye, Mom," she called out, already halfway out. She jumped slightly, then her face broke into a wide, relieved smile. "Mom, you're the best. Oh my gosh, you even got cookies." She immediately tore open the bag and took a bite. "I thought you might need some fuel," I said, my voice still calm, still pleasant. I didn't lean in for a hug. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, observing. "This is perfect, thank you so much." I was starting to panic. She was already plugging in the charger, her eyes fixed back on her screen. The relief was palpable. The crisis was averted. And just like that, I was dismissed. The tool had been used and could now be set aside. There was no "how are you?" no "what are you doing for your birthday?" I was already receding from her world, the problem solver fading back into the background. "It's no problem at all," I said softly. "Good luck with your project." "Thanks, Mom, love you," she said, the words automatic, her focus already consumed by the glow of the screen. I walked out of the library. The sunlight outside was bright. I got into my car, but I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there in the driver's seat, watching students walk back and forth across the campus lawn. This was the quiet reckoning, not with them, with myself. The anger I had expected to feel never came, neither did the sadness. Instead, a profound sense of clarity washed over me. By helping them, by performing my role with such detached perfection, I had finally seen it for what it was. My worth was not, and had never been, tied to their gratitude or their remembrance. My value wasn't a variable that fluctuated with their attention. I had spent decades seeking validation from a system that was designed to consume my energy without reciprocation. And in agreeing to help today, but on my own terms, with eyes wide open, I had taken that power back. The act of helping without the desperate need for a thank you or a return gesture was incredibly freeing. It was like unclenching a fist I didn't even know I was holding. I had done it for me, to prove to myself that I was capable of grace, even when it wasn't offered to me, to demonstrate that my kindness was my choice, not my obligation. The chains weren't put on me by them. I had clasped them myself, link by link. Every time I seethed silently over a forgotten anniversary or a missed birthday, I had simply chosen to stop rattling them. "Wait, honey, do you have everything?" I asked, a desperate attempt to prolong the interaction. I thought about the rest of my day. I thought about going home to a quiet house, to a husband who might or might not remember over dinner. And I knew I wouldn't say a word. The need for that confrontation was gone. The Parisian apologetic dinner, a belated card, was worthless. The real work had already happened inside this car. I started the engine, but I didn't drive home. I drove to the art supply store across town. I hadn't painted in years, always saying I was too busy, that the family needed me. I walked the aisles, smelling the turpentine and the fresh canvas. I bought a small set of watercolors and a pad of thick paper. Then I drove to the botanical gardens. I spent the next 2 hours sitting on a bench, trying to capture the delicate purple of an iris. I was terrible at it. The colors bled, the shapes were awkward. But it was the most fulfilling thing I had done in a decade. This was the investment, not in their needs, but in my own soul. I would still be their wife, their mother, the reliable one. But from now on, that would be a role I played, not the entirety of who I was. I would help, but I would no longer hemorrhage my own spirit in the process. My energy, my creativity, my peace, these were currencies I would now spend on myself and on the people who saw me not as a function, but as a friend. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors I could never hope to mix on my palette, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. The birthday hadn't been forgotten, it had been transformed. It was the day I finally gave myself the gift of my own freedom. The help I provided was the key that unlocked the door, and I simply walked through, leaving the echo of their expectations behind me. Family has a certain shape to it, a structure. It's like an invisible blueprint that everyone follows without ever talking about it. At the top there are my parents, not in a healthy leadership, kind of way more in a way that they are the sun, and the rest of us just orbit around their needs, their dramas. Then there are my siblings, the golden children, their orbits, are closer, brighter, everything they do is celebrated, a new job, a minor achievement. Even a simple cold becomes a family event, everyone rallies, then theirs. Me, my orbit is the furthest out, I am in the shadows. I am the problem solver, the reliable one. And those are just the nice words for it, the real title, the unspoken one. Is the scapegoat, I am the one who absorbs the tension. When something goes wrong, it's somehow my fault, or my responsibility to fix my feelings, are a luxury the family system can't afford. This birthday, waking up, it didn't feel like a celebration, it felt like a test, a day where the unwritten rules would be enforced more strictly than ever I knew it. I could feel it in the quiet of the morning. The rule is simple, I give, and everyone else takes. My role is to be the foundation, silent and strong, while they build their beautiful lives on top of me. My birthday is just another day where I am supposed to be the support, never the supported. It's a data point in a long, long history of being overlooked. The family narrative is set in stone, I am the strong one, which is just code for the one whose needs don't matter, the one who can handle the neglect. Because, well, they're so strong, so waking up, there was no surprise, just a dull ache of expectation, the prophecy of disappointment waiting to fulfill itself. And then the phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was pitched high, with panic, a familiar sound. It's the sound she makes when one of the golden children is in trouble. This time, it was my older brother. He'd gotten himself into a financial mess. A real mess, bad investments, maxed out credit cards, the whole thing. And now the bank was threatening something serious. It was a genuine crisis. And of course, I was the only one who could fix it. I am good with numbers. I am calm under pressure. I am the one with "Yep, love you," and the door closed again. Savings, all the skills and resources I built for myself to create a life outside of them, were now the very things they demanded I hand over. The conversation was a masterpiece of guilt-tripping. There was no good morning, no happy birthday. It was straight into the emergency. And the language she used, family duty, he's your brother. We're counting on you, you're the only one who can handle this. It was all about what I could do for them. There was zero acknowledgement that this day was supposed to be mine. That's the imbalance right there in its purest form. The golden child's mistake, his irresponsible choices, become a 5-alarm family emergency. But my milestone, a day that's supposed to be about me, is completely irrelevant. It's not even an afterthought, it's a non-thought. My birthday was simply invisible to them, wiped away by the sheer force of his failure. And something in me just snapped, but it wasn't a loud, dramatic snap. It was a quiet internal click, like a lock finally turning after years of being jammed. As she pleaded and pressured, I just listened. I heard the fear in her voice, not for me, but for him. I heard the absolute certainty that I would drop everything and come to the rescue. And for the first time in my life, I knew I wouldn't. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke. My voice was calm. It was simple. I said no, just that one word. Then I added, I can't help him with this. The silence on the other end was absolute. It was a void. I could almost hear the gears grinding to a halt in her mind. Her entire understanding of the universe, the family blueprint, had just been violated. The scapegoat was refusing its role. Then the shockwave hit. What did you just say? Her voice was cold. Now the panic was replaced by pure fury. What do you mean you can't? You have to. This is your brother. Are you just going to let him drown? I took a breath. I said, I am not going to be responsible for fixing his mistakes today or any other day. That's when the accusations started flying. They were textbook. You're betraying this family. After all we've done for you, we've always been there for you. That last one was the biggest lie of all. They've never been there for me, not like this, not when I needed them. But in that moment, saying those words out loud, I was holding up a mirror to the entire toxic system. I was showing them the ugly, unbalanced truth they worked so hard to ignore. I held firm. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. I said, my value to this family cannot be only in what I can fix for you. It can't only be about what I can provide. I am a person too. And today is my birthday. Saying that felt like speaking a foreign language. They didn't understand the words. They only understood the disobedience, the rebellion. The call ended with her screaming that I was a selfish, horrible person. Before she slammed the phone down, the silence that followed was louder than any scream. Immediate consequences were severe. The phone started ringing again from other relatives, my aunt, my other sibling. They were all armed with the same talking points. I was the villain now. I was being painted As cold, uncaring the one who turned her back on family in their hour of need, the scapegoat was being reinforced. But this time it was because I had refused to play the game. The texts came in full of anger, and threats I was shunned, cut off. The silence from them was meant to be a punishment it was designed to. Love you. The words hung in the empty room. They felt automatic, a reflex, like saying bless you after a sneeze. I looked at my phone again. Still nothing. I opened the messaging app. Maybe I had a bad signal, maybe the notifications weren't coming through. But there was nothing, just a text from yesterday about a dentist appointment. Make me feel so alone, so guilty, that I would come crawling back, apologizing for my rebellion. But a strange thing happened. As I sat there in the quiet of my own home after the calls, and the text stopped, I felt something I had never felt before in relation to my family: peace. A profound, deep, and liberating sense of peace. The weight was gone, the constant pressure, to perform, to fix, to absorb, to be the silent foundation. It had lifted for the first time. I wasn't managing their emotions, or cleaning up their messes. I was just sitting in my own space on my birthday, feeling the quiet truth of my own existence. It was terrifying, but it was also the most free I had ever been. This rebellion wasn't just about a birthday, it was about rewriting the entire story. My whole life, I had been living a narrative written for me by a dysfunctional system. I was the supporting character in someone else's story. By saying no, I grabbed the pen. I started writing my own. I realized that this role of the scapegoat, the problem solver, it's a generational cycle. Someone always has to play it. It was passed down to me. And if I didn't stop it, I might have passed it on somehow, maybe to someone else, or just continued to live it forever. Breaking that cycle isn't about anger, though anger is a part of it. It's about a fundamental refusal. A refusal to accept a lie about who you are. They told me I was strong, so they could burden me. They told me I was reliable, so they could depend on me, without ever having to reciprocate. They told me I didn't need anything, so they wouldn't have to give anything, and I finally stopped believing them. The conclusion I've come to in the days and weeks that followed is a difficult one. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do for a dysfunctional family is to stop helping on their terms. By refusing to be the scapegoat, by refusing to enable the golden child, you expose the sickness. You force the system to confront its own imbalance. It might not change them, they might never understand, they will probably always see me as the villain. But that's a price I am finally willing to pay, because the alternative was to slowly disappear into a role that was never meant for me. My rebellion wasn't an act of destruction. It was an act of self-preservation. It was the first real birthday gift I ever gave myself, the gift of saying my life, my feelings, my day, they matter. I am not just a function in their machine, I am a person. And I am done being forgotten. Alright, so the day started like any other Tuesday. The sun was up, the birds were probably chirping. I wouldn't know. I was too busy waiting for the chorus of happy birthday to come bursting through my bedroom door. It never did. I got up, made coffee, and waited by the phone. Nothing. I even made a point of walking through the living room, clearing my throat, extra loud. My wife just asked if I could move. I was blocking the TV. Lunchtime rolled around, crickets. I made myself a sad little lunch, just a single slice of bread with some cheese. On it I even put a single candle in the middle of it. I lit it, sighed dramatically, and sang happy birthday to myself in a really low, mournful voice. The cat wandered in and stared at me, so I sang it to the cat instead. He was less than impressed. That's when the idea first started to form. If I was so invisible, so utterly forgettable on the one day that's supposed to be all about me. I spent the morning trying to distract myself. I cleaned the kitchen, I folded laundry. But every few minutes I'd pick up my phone, I'd tap the screen to light it up. Nothing each time. The silence felt more deliberate, more personal. The rationalizations started up again, a frantic little committee in my head. They're just busy, it's a weekday, it's not a milestone birthday. It's not a big deal. Why are you making it a big deal? Stop being so sensitive. Then what was the point? I was clearly already dead to them. So I thought, why not make it official? If I'm a ghost, I should start acting like one. I decided to commit to the bit. This wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about theater. It was about holding up a mirror to the sheer comedy of the situation. My own family had forgotten I existed. The potential for a truly masterful prank was just too good to pass up. I was going to give them a show they'd never forget, literally. Phase 1 of Operation Going Ghost began immediately. I turned my phone on silent and stuffed it in a kitchen drawer under a pile of old takeout menus. I went about my day like a specter. I'd hear my wife's phone ring and shed say, "Huh, it's your mother," wonder why she's calling you. I'd just shrug and float on into another room. The texts started piling up, a few from my sister, a couple from my brother. I ignored them all, let the mystery brew. Then came the voicemail. My wife played it on speakerphone, her brow furrowed with a concern that was frankly insultingly delayed. It was my brother, his voice tight with panic. "Mark, hey, are you there? Mom took a really bad fall. It's not good. We're at St. Jude's. Call me back as soon as you get this." My wife looked at me, her eyes wide. "Mark, your mother." I felt a twinge of guilt, I won't lie. But this was for a greater good, a greater comedic truth. I had to sell it. I looked at her, my face a perfect mask of serene detachment. "My mother is fine," I said calmly. "She's at her book club. I spoke to her this morning." The lie was effortless. My wife's confusion deepened. The seeds of doubt were sown. This is when I enlisted my accomplice, my old college friend Dave. Dave has always appreciated a good, ethically questionable stunt. I called him from a blocked number, laying out the whole scheme. He was thrilled. His task was simple: to post a single ominous status update on Facebook. About an hour after the hospital voicemail, Dave's post went live. It read, "Sometimes life is so fragile. Just heard some terrible, shocking news about a good friend. Makes you hug your loved ones a little tighter. Prayers needed." The comments instantly flooded in. "OMG. Who? What happened?" "Dave," he responded to one, with a simple "not my place to say, just devastated." The digital panic merged with the real-world panic. My phone, still buried under the menus, was now blowing up. My wife was pacing, trying to call the hospital, calling my brother back, getting more and more frantic. She was muttering, "No one can find you. No one knows where you are." "Dave's posting these vague things. Mark, what is going on?" I just smiled slightly and said, "I am right here." But the way I said it, it was eerie even to me. I was a ghost in my own house, watching the living panic over my non-existent demise. The climax was set. My brother called my wife again. His voice ragged, "We need to find Mark. Meet us at Mom's house. Now this is an emergency." She grabbed her keys, her face pale. "Mark, come on. We have to go to your mom's." "It's serious." I nodded slowly. "I'll meet you there," I said. "I just need to make a stop first." While they all rushed to my mother's house, no doubt picturing me dead in a ditch, or something equally tragic, I made my stop. I went to the nearest party store. I bought a single giant metallic happy birthday balloon. It was ridiculously cheerful. I tied it to the passenger side headrest and drove to my mom's house at a leisurely pace, listening to some light jazz. But the hurt wasn't listening to the committee. The hurt was settling deep into my bones. It was the feeling of being an afterthought, a piece of furniture in my own home. The message was coming through loud and clear, without a single word being spoken. "You are not important enough to remember." I parked down the street and walked up to the house through the living room window. I could see them all huddled together: my wife, my brother, my sister, my mom, who was, as I predicted, perfectly fine, and looking very confused. They were a tableau of grief and anxiety. It was perfect. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my shirt, and opened the front. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed in the silent, tense room. They all turned. The looks on their faces were priceless. It was a mixture of pure shock, utter confusion, and dawning irritation. I stood there cool as a cucumber, holding the string of that stupid shiny balloon. It bobbed gently in the air-conditioned breeze. The silence was thick enough to cut with a knife. I let it hang there for a perfect dramatic 3 seconds. Then I spoke, my voice calm and clear. "I am so sorry I couldn't answer your calls earlier," I said, looking each of them in the eye. "I was busy." I paused again for maximum effect. "I was busy being dead to you. All you see. You forgot my birthday." The silence broke first. It was my brother. A snort escaped him, followed by a choked laugh. Then my sister clapped a hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking. My mom just stared, her mouth agape, before she slowly started to chuckle, shaking her head. My wife's face went through an entire journey from relief to anger to a kind of bewildered admiration. You absolute idiot," she said. But she was laughing now too. "You scared us half to death." "Exactly," I said, finally letting my own grin break through. "Now you know how it feels to be forgot." A little dramatic, I'll admit. But I felt the message needed some emphasis. I walked over to the kitchen table and tied the balloon to a chair. It floated there, a bright, ridiculous monument to my pettiness. The apology that followed wasn't somber or guilty. It was filled with laughter and playful shoves. "You're unbelievable," my brother said, throwing an arm around my shoulder. "We're sorry, you jerk." We completely blanked. My mom was already in the kitchen pulling a frozen cake out of the freezer. And preheating the oven well, we're celebrating now you dramatic fool, she announced. And we did the rest of the evening was a whirlwind of impromptu celebration. My wife ran out and got a proper cake with real candles. My brother ordered enough pizza to feed a small army, we told, and retold the story of the prank each time, making it a little more elaborate. The shared adrenaline from the scare turned into a genuine joyful energy. The celebration was 10 times more fun because of the absurd journey it took to get there. Later, as we were all stuffed with pizza and cake, my wife leaned over to me. She said, her voice soft, "That was the most insane, ridiculous thing you've ever done, and you're still in trouble for worrying us like that." But message received loud and clear. She kissed my cheek, "We see you." And that was the whole point. The prank, the comedy, the staged tragedy, it communicated the sting of being overlooked in a way that a sullen silence or an angry outburst never could. It created a shared story, a funny scar on the family memory that would ensure no birthday would ever be forgotten again. The moral of the story isn't that revenge is sweet, it's that sometimes humor is the bravest and most effective way to say, "Hey, I'm here, and my feelings are real." And honestly, it's a lot more fun than just being quietly disappointed with a piece of cheese on bread. By lunchtime, the hope had completely evaporated. It was just a dull ache. I made myself a sandwich I didn't want and ate it standing at the counter. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the living room. Each tick was another moment where I wasn't remembered, another moment where I was forgotten. The money was always quiet. It didn't make a sound when it arrived. It just settled into the accounts. A silent growing cushion. Id worked for that quiet. Id traded long hours and sleepless nights for the privilege of not having to check my balance before buying groceries. That kind of stability in my family was like a bright flashing beacon. It was known, it was discussed in hushed appreciative tones at holidays. "Oh, he's doing very well for himself." And because it was known, the money became a shield, a very expensive, very heavy shield. It stood between me and the kind of financial panic that seemed to be a permanent state for everyone else. But it also created a different kind of distance. I stopped being just a son, a brother, an uncle. I became a solution, a contingency plan, the unofficial family banker. The loans started small, a few hundred for a car repair with a promise to pay it back next week. Then it was a few thousand for a security deposit on an apartment. The repayments were slow. If they came at all, they'd arrive in fragments, 100 here, 50. They're always accompanied by a story about an unexpected bill. After a while, the promises just faded into the background noise of our relationships. The debt was never formally forgiven. It was just forgotten by them. I remembered every penny. My birthday came and went. It was a Tuesday. I remember waking up and checking my phone, half expecting the usual flurry of morning texts. There was nothing by lunchtime, a single message from a cousin I barely speak to. By evening, silence. I told myself it didn't matter, these things happen, people get busy. But it stung more than I wanted to admit. There was a pattern here. The better I did, the less my personal milestones seemed to register. My success had somehow made me less of a person to be celebrated and more of a resource to be managed. The prosperity had built a wall of silence around me. Then 2 days later, the phone rang. It was my sister. Her voice had that particular pitch, a tight, high-strung urgency. Id learned to recognize it wasn't a friendly call, it was a withdrawal request. She didn't bother with small talk. She went straight into the crisis. It was a tax bill. She said, a big one, something she'd fallen behind on, and now there were penalties. And if she didn't pay it by the end of the month, there would be liens, maybe worse. She needed $15,000. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of need, a demand. Then came the emotional blackmail. She invoked family. What's family for if not to help each other? She reminded me of all the times she'd been there for me when we were kids, a vague and exaggerated account of her support. She talked about loyalty. The tone wasn't pleading, it was entitled. It was as if she was calling a customer service line to access an account that was rightfully hers. There was no hesitation, no acknowledgement of the sheer size of the ask. And most importantly, there was not a single word about my birthday. The fact that she'd forgotten it entirely was just hanging there unspoken in the space between her sentences. I felt my grip tighten on the phone. My usual response was to sigh and say, let me see what I can do. But this time the words didn't come. Instead, something else did. A cold, clear voice in my head. I heard myself say, I can't give you an answer right now. I need to review my books. Then in the afternoon my phone rang. There was a stunned silence on the other end. Review my books, what did that mean? But I meant it literally. I got off the phone. And I went to my office. I didn't open a spreadsheet, I opened the ledger in my mind. I started counting, not just the dollars, though I did that too. I counted the car repair, the security deposit, the temporary loan to cover her vacation. When she was feeling stressed, the money for her son's braces that was never mentioned again. I added it all up, and the total was staggering. Number wasn't the important part. The important part was the audit of everything else. The birthdays of mine shed, missed the Christmases, where the gift I received was clearly an afterthought. The times Id tried to talk about a promotion at work, only to have the conversation steered back to her financial struggles. The dots connected themselves with a terrible final click. My value wasn't in my companionship, my advice, or my love. It was a number in a bank account, a line of credit. I was an ATM, a very well-funded one, that was expected. Dispense cash with a smile, no questions asked. When she called back a few hours later, her tone was sharper, more impatient. Well, did you look? I took a deep breath. This wasn't just a financial conversation anymore, this was an emotional reckoning. I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I looked at everything. I looked at all the previous help. And I looked at the calendar. My birthday was on Tuesday. You didn't call, you didn't text. But 2 days later, you're asking me for $15,000. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could hear her breathing shallow and quick. I will not be lending you this money. I said, the fact that you forgot my birthday, and then called with this request, it confirms everything. I just realized you don't see me, you see my bank balance. The reaction was instantaneous and furious. The mask of family loyalty vanished. She called me greedy. She called me selfish. She said I cared more about money than my own family. She said I was holding the past over her head, that I was keeping score. And in a way I was, but the score wasn't about the money, it was about respect. It was about being seen as a person. I didn't argue, I didn't try to defend myself. I just let the words wash over me. They were predictable. And in a strange way, they confirmed my decision. The anger wasn't about being refused help. It was about having a resource cut off. The ATM was malfunctioning. It was my sister. A jolt went through me, a final desperate flicker of that morning's hope. She remembered, of course she remembered, she's my sister. I took a deep breath, trying to sound casual. Hello. After the call ended, I felt a strange emptiness. But it wasn't a bad one, it was the quiet after a storm. I knew what I had to do. It was time to secure the vault permanently. I decided on a new rule: no more loans, not ever from now on. If I chose to give financial help, it would be a gift, a freely given, nostringsattached gift. And it would be my choice based on my desire to help, not on a sense of obligation or emotional manipulation. I would explain the difference to my family. Supporting family means helping someone get back on their feet. Being used as an ATM means enabling a cycle of dependency and disrespect. The fallout was messy. The accusations flew. I was the topic of furious family group chats, I wasn't included. I was the villain of the story. But a funny thing happened. The peace I found was greater than the noise they made protecting my wealth. I realized wasn't about hoarding money. It was about protecting my energy, my time, and my self-worth. The money I had worked for was a representation of my effort, and my life, letting it be siphoned off by entitlement, was a form of self-betrayal. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It wasn't the prosperous silence of being isolated by my success. It was a chosen silence, a boundary. The shield wasn't made of money anymore, it was made of resolve. And for the first time, I felt truly wealthy, not because of the number in my account, but because I had finally learned to put a price on my own peace, and it was worth infinitely more than any loan I could ever give. The sun was coming through my window, a thin pale light. It was my birthday. I remember the silence in the house. It was a heavy silence, the kind that feels louder than any noise. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway downstairs. My mom was making coffee. My brother was already on his phone at the kitchen table. It was just a normal Tuesday for them. For me, it was the day I turned 25, and the day I realized I was a ghost in my own home. I got dressed and went downstairs. I walked into the kitchen, and my mom just said good morning, asked if I wanted toast. My brother didn't even look up from his screen. There was no card on the counter, no present sitting on the table, nothing. I poured a bowl of cereal and sat down. The crunching sound was so loud in that quiet room. I kept waiting for someone to remember, for someone to say something, But the morning just went on. My mom started talking about a problem she was having with the neighbor's tree. My brother complained about his boss. They talked around me through me. I was just furniture. I finished my cereal and put the bowl in the sink. I said I was going for a walk. My mom just nodded, already distracted by something else. I stepped outside, and the air felt different, cleaner. I walked for hours. I walked through the park and saw a father pushing his little girl on a swing. She was laughing, this high, happy sound. I saw a group of friends having a picnic, a birthday cake, with candles right in the middle of their blanket. I saw all these little moments of connection, these small celebrations of people caring about each other, and I felt this profound distance, like I was watching it all from behind a thick pane of glass. I couldn't hear the laughter properly. The colors seemed muted. That's when the decision settled in my stomach. It wasn't a loud, dramatic moment. It was quiet and cold and solid. It was the final piece of evidence I needed. I wasn't just having a bad day. This was the truth. I was not seen here. I was not valued. I was a convenience, a background character in their lives. The thought formed clear and simple. I have to leave this house, this town, this life. It's time to go. Hey you, her voice was bright, cheerful, a little too cheerful. How are you? I walked home, my mind already racing, planning. I walked in the front door, and the phone was ringing. It was for me. It was my aunt. She didn't say happy birthday. She launched right into it. Her car had broken down, and she needed a ride to a doctor's appointment across town. In 4 to 5 minutes could I take her? She didn't ask if I was busy. She didn't ask if I had plans. It was just an expectation, a demand. I stood there in the hallway holding the phone, and I listened to her talk. She was going on about the mechanic, about how unfair it was, about how she couldn't miss this appointment. And I felt this strange calmness wash over me. It was like confirmation. This was it. This was the perfect final example of how things worked here. My needs, my day, my existence. It was all secondary to their constant draining demands. I was the one they called when they needed something, but I wasn't someone they thought to celebrate. I didn't get angry. I didn't argue. I just said yes. I told her I'd be there in 20 minutes. I agreed to do the favor. But in my head it was different. This was the last thing I would ever do for them. This ride was my final act. After I dropped her off, I wasn't going home. I was going to start my escape. I drove to my aunt's house. I was quiet in the car. She didn't notice. She talked the whole time about her problems. I nodded along. I dropped her off at the doctor's office. She got out of the car and said thanks. And then she hurried inside without a second look. I sat there in the driver's seat watching her go. And then I drove away. I didn't go back to my family's house. I drove to the storage unit I'd rented a week earlier, a secret I'd kept from everyone. Most of my things were already in there, just a few boxes left in my room. I went home one last time. It was the middle of the day, so the house was empty. Everyone was at work. The silence was different now. It wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. I went up to my room and packed the last of my bags. I didn't take much, just my clothes, some books, a few photos. I looked around the room, the posters on the wall, the old trophies on the shelf. It felt like a museum of a life I hadn't really lived. It felt like someone else's room. I didn't write a long letter. I didn't plan a big speech. I left a simple note on the kitchen table. It just said, I've moved away. I am safe. I'll be in touch when I am ready. Please don't try to find me. I didn't say I was sorry. I didn't explain myself. Any explanation would have just been an invitation for an argument, for them to tell me I was being dramatic, that I was wrong, I was done with that. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a fact. I got in my car, and I started driving. I didn't have a specific destination at first. I just knew I had to put miles between me and that town. I drove for 2 days straight, stopping only for gas and coffee. The further I got, the lighter I felt. It was like a physical weight was being lifted from my chest. With every mile marker, I could breathe a little deeper. The landscape changed. The flat, familiar fields gave way to hills, then to mountains. I was heading west. I found a city. It was big and anonymous. And that's exactly what I needed. I rented a small apartment. It was empty and echoey, but it was mine. The first night I slept on the floor in a sleeping bag. And it was the best sleep I'd had in years. There was no tension in the air, no unspoken expectations, just quiet. The next few months were the hardest and most rewarding of my life. I got a job, a simple job in a coffee shop. I learned how to make a proper latte. I learned the names of the regulars. I furnished my apartment slowly, piece by piece. A second-hand table, a chair, a lamp, every object was a choice I made for myself. There was no one to tell me it was the wrong color or the wrong style. It was all mine. The solitude wasn't lonely. It was powerful. It was the first time I had ever been truly alone with. My phone was on the counter. I picked it up. The screen was blank, no notifications, no messages. I put it down. I told myself, it was too early. People have lives, they're sleeping. But the flutter in my chest was starting to feel more like a weight. The hope bloomed again. This was it, the belated wish, the apology for the morning's silence. I am okay, I said, waiting for her to say it. Myself, and I started to like the person I was finding. I started talking to people not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I met a woman named Sarah at the coffee shop, who was into the same obscure books I was. We started a book club. I met a guy named Leo in my apartment building, who taught me how to fix a leaky faucet. We started watching football games together on Sundays. These connections were slow. They were built on shared interests and mutual respect, not on obligation. Months went by. My birthday was approaching again. I felt a little nervous about it. A part of me was afraid that the day would come and go, and the silence would feel like it did before, but it was different. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was a text from Sarah. Happy birthday. Don't make any plans for tonight, we're taking you out. Then a text from Leo. Happy birthday, man. See you at 7. Throughout the day, more messages came in from people at work, from friends they remembered, without me having to remind them, without me having to drop hints. They just remembered. That night we went to a small, loud Italian restaurant. They had reserved a table. There were 10 of us. We ate pasta and drank red wine and laughed so much my stomach hurt at the end of the meal. The waiter brought out a cake. It had 26 candles on it. They all started singing happy birthday. It wasn't a perfect song. Leo was off-key. Sarah forgot the words for a second. But it was real. I looked around the table at their faces lit by the candlelight. These people had chosen to be here. I had chosen them. I thought about my family back home. I wondered if they even realized it was my birthday. I felt a small, distant pang of sadness. But it wasn't the sharp, painful thing it used to be. It was more like acknowledging a scar. It was a part of my history, but it didn't define my present. Sitting there in that restaurant, surrounded by the noise and the warmth of my friends, I understood something. Leaving wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of self-preservation. It was the only way I could save myself, by putting that physical distance between me and my family. I had finally created the space I needed to breathe, to grow, to become a person who could have a real birthday with people who genuinely wanted to celebrate it. I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. The most loving thing you can do for a family that's drowning you is to save yourself. Because you can't fix a dynamic you're trapped inside. You need the distance to see it. Clearly, you need the space to build something new. And in building a new family, a chosen family, you don't erase the old one. You just finally learn what a family is actually supposed to feel like. It's supposed to feel like this, like people seeing you, like people remembering your birthday, like coming home. Good, listen, I am in a bit of a bind. Her tone shifted. It became practical, businesslike. I need a huge favor. You remember Mark, my financial guy? Well, he's gone totally radio silent on me. And I have this thing with the investment property. And the paperwork is a nightmare. I know you used that really good accountant a few years back for your thing. What was his name again? And do you still have his number? I am desperate here. Today is my birthday, and I decided to run an experiment. I am treating the entire day like a scientist, in a lab observing a phenomenon. The phenomenon is me. And the hypothesis is simple. If I remove all expectations, what remains? I haven't reminded a single person. No casual mentions of the date. This week, no hints about plans. Usually I'd orchestrate the whole thing, wouldn't I? Planting the seeds, watering them, with little comments, hoping they'd grow into a surprise party, or at least a phone call. But not this year. This year there's no hope, only curiosity. The goal isn't to receive anything. The goal is to watch what happens when I finally stop performing the role of the birthday reminder. It's a deliberate step into non-attachment, a conscious uncoupling from the need for external validation. I woke up this morning, and instead of waiting for the phone to ring, I made myself a perfect cup of coffee. I sat by the window and just watched the day begin. This is an active choice, a form of learning. I am not a victim waiting to be disappointed. I am a researcher collecting data. The data came in, and it was exactly what the initial conditions predicted. Silence. The phone stayed silent all morning. By noon, the screen was still dark. I'd check it, not with anticipation, but with a kind of clinical interest. Ah yes, no notifications. Data point recorded the emails that trickled in. Were all automated from stores offering me a discount more data. The social media alerts were from platforms themselves, not from people. I noted the time 300 p.m. a point where in previous years a low-grade anxiety would have started to set in, but this time I observed that anxiety like a weather pattern moving through me. I felt the twinge, the little pang of something. But because I was in observer mode, I could just label it, ah, that's the sensation of a forgotten social ritual. I didn't fight it, I just watched it rise. And then interestingly fall away. It lost its power. Because I wasn't feeding it with stories of neglect. Then the call came. It wasn't a happy birthday call, it was my sister needing help with a computer problem. It was the perfect predictable outcome, the ultimate data point. She talked for 10 minutes about her printer error. And never once did the date seem to cross her mind. And instead of feeling hurt, I felt a strange sense of confirmation. The experiment was working, the hypothesis was being proven, the sting was there. But it was distant, muffled, like hearing a noise from another room. I was too busy taking notes on its existence to be overwhelmed by it. After the call, I began the analysis. The data was clear, so the question was why? Why did this happen? It's not about memory. Not really. People remember what is a priority to them. They remember deadlines for work appointments. They've paid for dates that have tangible consequences. A birthday, especially for an adult, has no consequence. If it's ignored, there's no system that fails, no bill that goes unpaid. It exists purely in the realm of emotional priority. And I was not an emotional priority. I had to unpack the difference between love and utility. I think in families these lines get terribly blurred. They love you, of course they do, in that foundational taken for granted way. But you are also useful. You are the reliable one, the one who remembers, the one who organizes, the one who fixes the printer. And when utility becomes your primary function, the love doesn't need to be actively demonstrated. It's assumed, my always being available, my constant reminders, my orchestration of every family event. Had trained them to be irresponsible. I had taken on the entire psychological burden of maintaining our connections, and they had gratefully accepted the lighter load. The key insight wasn't that they were neglectful. The insight was that I was complicit. I had built this system. I had handed them the blueprint for how to treat me. And it was a blueprint that placed me firmly in the role of the supporter, not the one to be supported. And that's where the shift happened. The integration, the data was in, the analysis was complete. And the conclusion was liberating. My worth is not determined by whether my sister remembers a date on a calendar. My value is not a function of my utility to my family. I realized I had been outsourcing my self-esteem for decades, waiting for them to validate me with a cake or a card, and feeling the entire structure of my worth crumble when it didn't come. So I decided to take that power back. The words landed like physical blows. Each one drove the air from my lungs. The cheerful tone wasn't for me. It was for the favor, the bind she was in. I could feel the blood draining from my face. The room seemed to tilt slightly. It wasn't just that she'd forgotten. It was the reason she was calling. It was so calculated, so transparent. Decided to validate myself after the call with my sister. I didn't sink into sadness. I went out. I bought myself a slice of the most decadent chocolate cake from the bakery I love. I sat in the park and ate every bite without guilt. I gave myself the gift of a long, uninterrupted afternoon reading a book. I celebrated myself. I became the source of my own joy. This isn't about punishing them or withdrawing love. It's about restructuring the entire dynamic from the inside out. The relationship with my family may or may not change. Maybe they'll remember next year, maybe they won't. But it doesn't matter in the same way anymore. The outcome is irrelevant, because my internal state is no longer tied to it. I have given myself the one gift I always wanted from them, the sure and certain knowledge that I am enough all by myself. The story doesn't end with a reconciled family scene. It ends with me right here, right now, feeling a quiet, steady contentment. I am enjoying my own company. I have given myself gift of self-reliance, and it is the most peaceful birthday I have ever had. I was silent for too long. The realization was dawning with a terrible cold clarity. The birthday was forgotten. This call was purely transactional. I was a resource, a Rolodex, a convenience. Are you there? She asked, a hint of impatience in her voice. Cynthia, I said, my own voice, surprisingly calm, flat. Do you know what day it is today? There was a pause, a full 3 seconds of dead air. I could almost hear the frantic scrambling on the other end, the mental calendar checking. Oh my God, her voice dropped the cheerful facade. It was rushed, now panicked. Oh honey, I am so sorry, happy birthday. It completely slipped my mind with the kids' schedules. And this property mess my head is just spinning, you know how it is, I am terrible with dates, you know that about me. The apologies weren't apologies, they were justifications, excuses. They were about her stress, her busy life. They weren't about me. They weren't about the hurt. You only called because you needed something, I said. The words came out quietly. But they felt huge. I had never said anything like that to her. Before I had always swallowed the hurt, smiled, and given her what she wanted. I poured my coffee, and sat at the table. The house stayed quiet. Then I heard footsteps upstairs, my son. I thought he must be getting ready for work. I heard the shower turn on, then off he came down the stairs, his tie not quite straight, scrolling through something on his phone. He walked right past me to the coffee pot. The stunned silence was deeper this time. I could feel her shock through the phone. What? That's not true. I was going to call you later. Were you? I asked, or did you only remember because you hit a problem you thought I could solve? That is so unfair, she snapped, her defensiveness rising immediately. I am your sister. I am allowed to ask you for a favor. Everyone gets busy. It's just a birthday. Are you really going to hold a grudge over this? That seems a little selfish, don't you think? Selfish, the word echoed in the quiet kitchen, accusing me of being selfish, for wanting to be remembered, for wanting to be more than a utility. And in that moment, her accusation proved my point more than anything I could have said. The relationship was conditional. I was loved as long as I was useful, as long as I didn't make inconvenient emotional demands. I took another deep breath. The ache in my chest was different now. It wasn't the ache of disappointment. It was the clear, sharp pain of truth. No, Cynthia, I said, my voice firm, I'm not going to give you the accountant's number. What? Why not? Because help isn't just a transaction, it's something you give to someone you care about, someone who sees you, who remembers you. It's reciprocal. It comes from a place of care, not convenience. And what I'm feeling right now, that's not care. The backlash was instant. I can't believe this. After everything I've done for you, you're going to be like this over a stupid birthday? Fine. Whatever, I'll figure it out myself. I guess I know where I stand. Yes, I said the word final. I guess you do. Morning, he mumbled, not looking up from his screen. I ended the call. I placed the phone back on the counter. The silence in the house was different now. It wasn't empty. It was full of the echo of that conversation, full of a new resolve. The accusations hung in the air, selfish, holding a grudge, but they didn't stick anymore. They felt like words from a different life, a life where I was willing to accept scraps of affection. I wasn't angry. I was sad, a deep, profound sadness for the relationship I thought we had, but I was also clear. For the first time in a long time, I felt clear. I wasn't going to fight about it. I wasn't going to try to explain myself again. The dynamic was broken. I had always been the reliable one, the one who remembered everything, who was always there to help. And I saw now that my reliability had made me invisible. It had become an expectation, not a gift. I decided right then that I would redefine what family means. Family shouldn't be a one-way street. It should be a place of mutual respect, where you are valued for who you are, not just for what you can provide. And if that wasn't available here, then I would prioritize the relationships where it was. The friends who had already texted me this morning, the ones who saw me. I went out that evening by myself. I went to a small bookstore I like, and I bought myself a beautiful, expensive edition of a book I'd been wanting to read. Then I went to a nice restaurant and sat at the bar. I ordered a glass of wine and the steak. I didn't look at my phone. I just enjoyed the meal. I celebrated myself. It was a quiet celebration. There was no cake, no singing. But it was real. It was an acknowledgement that I am worth remembering, that my feelings are valid, setting that boundary with my sister, choosing my own worth over the desperate need to be needed. That was the gift. It was a gift of honesty, a gift of self-respect. And as I walked home under the streetlights, the cool night air on my face, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The house was still silent when I returned, but the silence no longer felt like forgetting. It felt like my own. The morning of my birthday, I woke up early. The sun was just starting to come up, casting this soft, quiet light through the blinds. I lay there for a while, just listening to the house. It was completely silent. I guess a part of me Was hoping to hear something, maybe the sound of someone creeping around downstairs, getting a surprise ready. But there was nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I got my phone and opened the social media app. I took a picture of the sunrise from my window. It was a beautiful, peaceful shot. I wrote a simple caption, something like "Hello, New Year." I posted it as a story so it would disappear in 24 hours. It felt like a little test. A hopeful, quiet little signal sent out into the world. I didn't tag anyone, I didn't ask for anything, I just put it out there. Then I started watching it, check my phone every 10 minutes. At first it was just a few views from people I barely knew. Then, a message popped up from an old college friend, "Happy birthday, hope you have a great day." I smiled and typed back a thank you. Then another message from a coworker. Then another, all these people from different parts of my life, remembering their little profile pictures, popping up with well wishes, felt like small warm lights. "Good morning," I said. My voice sounded a little too hopeful. But the section where my family's names should have been, it was just dark, empty. My sister had been online. I saw the little green dot next to her name. Shed seen. The story shed seen, the happy birthday messages from other people piling up in the comments on my main post. But nothing, not a word. My mom was active too, sharing some recipe video. She had to have seen the notification. But again, nothing. It was this weird silent treatment. This active ignoring. The irony was so thick you could taste it. Here were these virtual strangers offering genuine kindness, and the people who shared my blood, my last name, couldn't be bothered to type 2 words. I decided to start recording, not for anyone else, just for me, a private video diary. I opened the camera on my phone and switched it to video. I held it up my face, probably looking tired in the early morning light. I didn't say anything at first, I just panned the camera around my quiet bedroom. Then out the window. Then I started talking, my voice quiet. It's 7:15 a.m. on my birthday. So far the only sounds are the birds outside. I posted a story. Let's see what happened. Stopped recording. Throughout the day, I kept it up. I'd film little snippets, me making coffee. 10:30 a.m. radio silence from the family group chat. You'd think it would be buzzing, right? Me eating a sandwich for lunch alone. 100 p.m. Got a nice text from my dentist, actually automated. But still more than I've gotten from home. The videos were just for me, a record of the hours ticking by, a documentation of the absence. The hurt wasn't a sharp pain anymore, it was this dull, heavy weight settling in my chest. With every hour that passed, it got heavier. Then around 400 p.m. my phone rang. It was my sister. My heart did this little jump. Maybe this was it. Maybe they'd been planning a surprise all along. I took a breath and answered, "Hello." Her voice wasn't warm, it wasn't singing happy birthday. It was tense, rushed. "Hey, listen, I need a huge favor, like right now." The hope I'd felt instantly evaporated, replaced by this cold clarity. "Oh," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Yeah, it's a disaster. I am stuck downtown. My car just completely died. I am getting it towed. But I have all these groceries in the trunk, and I have to pick up the kids from soccer in like 40 minutes. Can you come get me right now?" He just grunted, pouring his coffee. He leaned against the counter, typing rapidly with one thumb. I waited. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Maybe he's waiting for the right moment, maybe it's a surprise. I was quiet for a second. I could hear the traffic noise behind her. The urgency in her voice was real. But it was entirely about her problem. There was no "how are you," no "happy birthday," just a demand. So I asked calmly, quietly, "Did you see my post today on social media?" There was a pause on the other end, a beat of silence, where I could practically hear her brain scrambling. What post? Look, I don't have time for that. Are you coming or not?" "The one about it being my birthday," I said, not letting her bulldoze past it. She let out an exasperated sigh. "Oh, that, yeah, I saw it. Look, I am sorry. Okay, happy birthday. But this is an emergency. Can we talk about this later? I really need your help." And that was it. That was the confirmation, a dismissive, annoyed happy birthday tossed at me like a bone, just to get what she needed. It wasn't an apology. It was an inconvenience. My birthday was an inconvenience to her real-life problem. In that moment, something in me just shifted. It was like a switch flipped. All the hurt of the day, all the years of feeling like an afterthought, it crystallized into this cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to play along anymore. "Hold on a second," I said to her. I opened my social media app again. I went live. I turned the camera on myself. My face was probably pale, but my hands were steady. I looked into the camera. Hello, everyone, I am going live for a minute. This is unexpected. I could hear my sister's tinny voice through the phone speaker, saying, "What are you doing? Hello." I held the phone up to the camera, so the live audience could hear her. I am on the phone with my sister. Right now it's my birthday today. And as you can see, she's not calling to wish me a happy birthday. I spoke clearly directly to the people starting to join the live video. The viewer count began to climb. He finished typing, shoved his phone in his pocket, and finally looked at me. Got a big meeting today, probably gonna be late. He grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door. See you tonight. She's calling because her car broke down and she needs a ride, and I just asked her if she'd seen the birthday post I made this morning. She said she had, but she didn't have time for it. I repeated her words back, my voice flat. She offered a happy birthday just now, but only so I would hurry up and come help her. My sister's voice crackled through the phone louder. Now angry. What are you talking about? Are you filming this? Are you serious? Right. Now hang up and come get me. I looked right into the camera. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like when your family forgets you, but remembers you exist when you're useful all day long. I've watched friends and acquaintances send me kind messages, but from my own family nothing until now, until they need something. The comments started flying by. People were typing things like, "Oh my God," and "This is brutal," and "Happy birthday, you don't deserve this." My sister was yelling, "Now, this is insane, you're being a selfish drama queen. It's just a birthday, I have kids to pick up." I took a deep breath. The panic in her voice was feeding my calm. This was the truth, raw and unfiltered. And she hated being exposed. "No," I said, my voice firm now, both to her and to the live audience. "It's not just a birthday, it's a day that's supposed to be about me. And you forgot, all of you forgot. And you don't get to demand my time and my help on a day you couldn't even acknowledge me." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. The live viewer count was in the hundreds now, so no. I said, "I am not coming to get you. Y'all have to figure it out. Y'all have to call a taxi or a friend. But today I am not your solution today. I am prioritizing my own worth over my utility to you." The sound she made was pure fury, a strangled, frustrated scream. "You unbelievable jerk. After everything I've done for you, you're going to regret this." Then, I heard the click. She had hung up. I was left holding my phone, the live screen still active. The comments were a blur of support. "You're so brave, happy birthday queen." Block them all. I managed a small shaky smile. "Thank you everyone, thank you for remembering me." And I ended the live video. The immediate fallout was a storm. My phone started blowing up. First, it was texts from my sister, long angry paragraphs full of insults. Then my mom called, her voice shrill, demanding to know why I would embarrass the family like that. Then my other sibling chimed in. They were a united front of anger. But mixed in with their messages were dozens, then hundreds of notifications from the live video people, sharing it, commenting on it, sending me private messages of support. The video was saved to my profile. And he was gone. The door closed behind him. The silence rushed back in louder than before. I just sat there staring at the wood grain of the table. The weight in my chest was solid now, a dull heavy stone of disappointment. Okay, I thought, okay, he's busy. He's stressed. It's not that he doesn't care, he just has a lot on his mind. And it started getting shared everywhere. Strangers were telling me their stories of family neglect. I wasn't alone anymore. In the days that followed, I spent a lot of time just reading those messages, reflecting on what I had done. It took a certain kind of courage, I think, to do that, to break the unspoken rule that family drama stays behind closed doors, to prioritize my own feelings, my own hurt, and set a boundary in the most public way possible. It wasn't a quiet, private sadness. It was a confrontation. The long-term impact was complicated. Things with my family are strained, to say the least. There's a distance now that wasn't there before, but it's a more honest distance. The pretense is gone. They don't call me for favors anymore. Sometimes that feels lonely, but most of the time it feels like a relief, like a weight has been lifted. I don't have to perform the role of the reliable, forgiving sibling who doesn't mind being overlooked. The relationship is now on my terms, based on mutual respect, or it's not there at all. The lesson I learned was a hard one. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes people get so comfortable with taking you for granted that the only way to make them see you is to stop being available, to let them fail, to let them face the consequences of their own neglect. It's not about revenge, it's about truth. By refusing to help that day, I wasn't just saying no to a car ride, I was saying yes to myself. I was finally acknowledging my own value. And in doing so, I forced them to acknowledge it too. All they could feel was anger. They saw me, maybe for the first time they truly saw me, not as a tool, but as a person with feelings, with a birthday, with a boundary that could not be crossed. And that shift in power, that seismic change, it started when I decided that my worth was not up for negotiation. I knew at the moment I woke up. The silence in the house was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't peaceful. It was an empty quiet, the kind that tells you something is missing. And what was missing was any recognition of the day, my birthday. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel that sharp sting of disappointment. Not today. That feeling was familiar, an old acquaintance I'd grown tired of entertaining. This was different. This was a cold, clear understanding, a final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. This wasn't a singular oversight, it was a confirmation. I walked through the morning like an ethnographer studying a strange tribe, my own family. I watched my husband scan the news on his phone, his brow furrowed at some distant crisis, completely oblivious to the one sipping coffee 3 feet away. I observed my daughter rushing to get her bag, talking a mile a minute about her plans for the evening with friends. There were no sideways glances, no hidden smiles, no whispered secrets, just the mundane mechanics of a Tuesday. And I realized this was the pattern. My role was the foundation, the stable, reliable ground upon which their lives were built. And foundations aren't celebrated, they're expected, they're depended upon, they're forgotten. My daughter was next. I heard her door open, and close upstairs, she came down, her face already lit by the glow of her own phone. She was talking to someone, her AirPods in, laughing at something they said. She went straight to the pantry, grabbed a granola bar, and gave me a little wave as she headed for the door. The call came in the afternoon, just as I knew it would. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, my daughter's picture flashing on the screen. I let it ring 3 times. I needed to breathe, to center myself. When I answered, my voice was calm, pleasant, even. Hello, sweetheart. Mom, hi, okay, so I have a huge favor. No happy birthday, no small talk, just the direct line to the solution, which was me. I left my laptop charger at home, the big one for my design project. And I have a major deadline tonight. I am so swamped, I can't possibly drive all the way back. Could you maybe bring it to the library for me? I'll be in the study, Carol's on the 4th floor. I could have said no, I could have reminded her, I could have let the hurt seep into my words. But I didn't. I was a field researcher, noting the data points, the phrasing, a huge favor, the assumption, could you maybe not, would it be possible, the total absence of any acknowledgement of the day. It was a perfect specimen of our dynamic. Of course, I said, my voice smooth as glass. The library, 4th floor, I'll find it and bring it right over. Thanks, Mom, you're a lifesaver, love you. The line went dead. The transaction was complete. I went upstairs to her room. It was in its usual state of creative chaos. I found the charger cable coiled neatly on her desk, right where Shed said it would be. But next to it was a sketchbook open to a vibrant, intricate drawing. It was beautiful. She had so much talent. For a moment, the clinical distance I'd built up wavered. I saw my little girl, the one who used to draw me pictures for my birthday every year without fail. But that girl was gone, replaced by this busy, wonderful, and yet terribly forgetful young woman. I closed the sketchbook. I picked up the charger. The moment passed. I didn't just bring the charger. I stopped at her favorite bakery and bought 2 of the enormous frosted cookies she loved. I put the charger in a tote bag, along with the cookies and a bottle of cold water. I was going to perform this favor flawlessly. I was going to be the ultimate helper. But it wasn't coming from a place of love, not in the way it used to. It was coming from a place of demonstration. I was proving a point to myself. I am capable, I am reliable, I am the gears that make this family machine run, and today I was choosing to turn those gears, with a steady, deliberate hand, fully aware of the mechanics for the first time. The library was quiet, the air smelling of old paper and dust. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. I saw her immediately hunched over her laptop, a look of intense concentration on her face. She didn't see me approach. I placed the tote bag gently on the corner of her table.